Now, first of all, what are actually modules? Why we have modules? Okay, so modules in JavaScript are nothing but yeah, each and every JavaScript files. Each and every JavaScript file is considered as a module. They're not a different syntax, anything. But then, yeah, so not every JS file is considered as a module, but modules are a JavaScript files. Okay, so now at the end of this, you will understand, okay, what is the difference between module? Yeah, when do we call it as a module, or when do we call it as simply a script, a .js file? Okay, so before getting into that, yeah, so again, the purpose is they basically help in organizing our code. Yeah, so we say modularity. Instead of putting everything in one single file, instead of writing the whole application logic in one file, it helps us in organizing it. And that becomes easy to maintain the code, right? So organizing and maintaining are the important aspects of having a module. Some of the key features of module, yes, they bring in encapsulation, which means any variables, functions which are defined in this module are scoped to that module. In simple, yeah, assume I have a module. So imagine it that's a file which is there. Here I define some variable. Yeah, I also create a function. Now these things, yeah, this function and this variable, they are both scoped to this module. So let's call module A here. And how do I create module? It's simply a JS file. Okay, let's say module a.js. So now what we are understanding, so this nothing, there is an encapsulation here, which means whatever you create is only scoped to this. So if I have another module like module B, I cannot directly use them in another module. It means I cannot use them in another file just like that. Why? Because these are scoped to this. I cannot do a console log A here because A is scoped to this. Same way the function also scoped to that module. Okay, we have examples. We'll see them. Then, yes, as I told you, reusability, maintainability. Yeah, those are the key features of having a module. Yeah, encapsulation. The purpose is reusability and maintainability. Along with that, we get encapsulation also, which means a scope which gets created. If you remember, yeah, long back when we were actually discussing about scopes, yeah, so we were actually getting what is called as, a script. Yeah, apart from local and global, there used to be even script to scope. That is actually because of modules. That is a scope. Okay, I think we'll see some examples. I think I'll try to explain them. But before getting into the syntax, modules in JavaScript syntax have some history actually. History as in, okay, so today we are seeing one syntax, but that it was not the same syntax that was there, much before. And we still see a syntax, yeah, a syntax which is there, like, this particular syntax, the common JS syntax. So there are three kind of module system which the JavaScript world has seen so far. The one is called Common JS Module System. The second one is AMD, Asynchronous Module Definition. The third one and the currently used and preferred is ECMAScript Module System, which is called ESM syntax. So today we will understand more about this syntax and to understand what is this. Yeah, as I told you, this module system has got an history. Yeah, so we didn't have our own, a native module system, but 2015 through the ECMAScript 6, we got our own module system, and that module system they named it as ESM, ECMAScript modules. So earlier we were using this common JS syntax. Today also still some of the applications we actually see using common JS module system. How does a common JS module system works? So, so let's say I create a .js file. Fine. In that file, yes, we will have both variables and functions. That is also fine. But then, what if I have to borrow, you know, what if I have to borrow things from one file to other file? Yeah, I have some variable, I want to use it in here. I have some function, I want to use it. Now this is where, yeah, the syntax of each of this model system actually comes into picture. Yeah. So in case of common JS, we have a certain syntax. In case of ESM model system, we have certain syntax, and same goes for AMD as well. Now, what we have to learn is, yes, in CJS, how do we borrow methods? Yeah, or how do we share methods? How do we share this function? Or how do we borrow this method in some other file? Understanding? So it is the same concept. It's the same things we need to be aware whether you learn CJS or ESM. In case of common JS, which is actually created for Node.js, mostly the server side. Today, even if we are actually working on Node.js, we see this syntax is still there. Yeah, in some of the older application. Let's say if I just create a .js file, see we continue to see this syntax wherein if we create you know uh, a function, the way we export is, yeah, so we export it as an object by putting in, yeah, we can even export as an object or export it as a function. So I'll have to write module.exports. Okay. And to this I have to, let's say if I have to just export a function, then I have to say module.exports is equal to say hello. Yeah, this is a way to export it from the source. Now let's say you want to import it in another file, then you have to use this word called require, and then you have to mention the path to that particular module, which is nothing but the JavaScript file. Yeah. So without the extension, you can mention the path to that, and then you will be able to invoke if it is a function. If it's an object, you can access with a dot. Yeah. So I'm saying this syntax is used. It is there still. Yeah. Maybe bits and pieces of code today still they're going with this common JS model system. So if you see anywhere module.exports and the required keyword, so you just remember that that's a syntax to export modules in a common JS module system. But today, so let's understand in detail about what is ES6 module system. Yeah. So yeah, this AMD is no more in use actually. Or I've seen, I think it's very less. But again, you see the syntax. How does it work? Yeah. So you just have an example syntax here. Okay, so with that, let's move on to javascript.info. So here they've given modules introduction. They're also telling the core module features like what we saw, and they've given some browser specific features also, and they're talking about build tools. But for now, I think it's sufficient if you understand what is a module, okay, and also the core features of a module. And after that, we will see export and import syntax. Yeah, I just gave you a brief on what exactly is AMD, what is common JS. Yeah, yes, there exists UMD also, universal module definition. Yeah, so this syntax was also there, but none of this are in practice now. Okay, so one you need to aware is common JS to an extent. Otherwise, you have to learn the latest syntax. Now, what exactly is a module? Yes, as I told you, it is just a file. One script itself is called a module. As simple as that. There is no other way to create a file because it is supposed to be a module. But then we use this keyword called export and import. We use export to export everything from that file. Why do we export? Because we have created that method or a function in such a way that it can be used elsewhere. Yeah, otherwise we understood module has a scope and those are just limited to that module only. You cannot just borrow that. This is not allowed. Correct? This is not allowed, not possible. Fine. So that's why we need to now understand. So import is a syntax which basically allows to import from other modules. For example, here, so there is a file called say hi.js and we have written export and then the name of the function. What is the syntax? Yeah, export and the name of the function. If you write, then this method is now ready for exporting it and it can be consumed outside also or within that file also. Okay, let me write those syntaxes. Okay, so script, yeah, I'll use a script tag. Oh, sorry, I'm I think trying to do within the, okay, yes, this is what we have seen yesterday. I guess none of this is not required now. Just give a minute, I'll clean it up. Okay, so what I'm saying is we can write a script block and within that script block, yes, so yeah, I can put some source. Let's say hi.js. Now what I'm saying, so if they say hi.js, yeah, within that I have to create a file called say hi.js and here you create a normal function like any function you want. Okay, say hi. That's a function I want to create. What it does, yeah, it can do some simple console log or alert, whatever it you want to do it, you can write that implementation. So since it is say hi, I'm saying hi. Now this file, what if I want to use in a file called script.js? I would like to use that function. Yeah, how is that possible? Yeah, it is possible provided you write export, yeah, and say hi. Yeah, you can write. So there are multiple syntax, okay, syntactical difference, but the keywords are same. So one way to do is I just prefix this keyword called export. Now this function can be invoked or used. So let's say in index.html, again I write a script here. Yeah, within the script I can write an import. I'll say hi from the from the what? From the dot slash say hi. This is a file from which I would like to import and then I would like to call this function. You can say hi. Yeah. So let's see if I can go to say hi. Its reference is not being resolved. Did I name it as say hi? Yeah. So basically the syntax of import is what I'm showing. Uh, let's see. I also have to use what is called as module, but I'll tell you what is the syntax of module means. Okay. Okay. No, it's not resolving. Okay. But that's fine. So what we saw how to export. The simple syntax is to just use the keyword export next to that function. Can I use the same syntax for exporting a variable also or a constant? Yes, you can use the same syntax, export const. Okay, let's say you want to export a constant called pi, which is there in your file, 3.14, yeah, which is a constant. I've kept all the things in one common file. So now this variable also can be exported from here. All we have to do is simply put export. Yeah, and remember both functions and variables can be exported. So let's say I have another function, say hello. This function, if I'm not writing export, then it is not, available outside. It cannot be invoked outside. Why? Because it is not exported. It is meant to be used within the module only, or you can think of like this is a private method, just belongs to this module only. Now let me tell you about syntax. Let's say now I have function, variable, and I might have another function, okay, which also I would like to export. So instead of writing this multiple export statement, yeah, so there is its equivalent syntax. Yeah, there is its equivalent syntax. We can write this also in one single line by writing export, and I have to export it by putting curly bracket and name of the function. Say hello, pi, comma, say hello, say hi. Now this is a simpler syntax over writing export in every line. Now here I can add any new things I would like to export it easily. This is also same as earlier syntax. Yeah, purpose is same, only the syntactically it differs. So we'll have to put curly bracket and then export it. Or I have to write export directly next, just preceded by the function keyword or this, const or let. Okay, so this is the export syntax. But then, yeah, more than a syntax, there are a lot of things that we need to understand about this module system. So let's see, those things, and then I think we have a dedicated chapter itself here, which talks about all the different syntax. Okay, so what else? Yeah, so it is possible to, once you do an export, it is possible to import, yeah, from a file like this. Yeah, using import, the syntax is import, and since you exported it like an object, yeah, so you have to write it like an object, so that's why, so we kind of import it like say hi, and then I can execute that function by passing in appropriate parameters if there are any. Now what does this import do? It loads this module. Yeah, it is going to load this file. It has to be available, right? So here this path can be, yeah, some relative path or some absolute path. You can give either of the path. And you know with the import, yeah, JavaScript will load that file for you, and it is going to be immediately executed also. Only the file is executed. It's not that it is going to invoke this method. Yeah. Now there is one thing that we need to be aware. Yeah. So if at all I'm using a file as a module, I have to instruct the browser. I have to tell the browser, see, this is not a regular JavaScript file which is there. Okay, this is not a regular JavaScript file, but instead it is having a special syntax of export and import. Okay, and consider this as a module. That is wherein, yeah, we put, in index.html or the HTML file. So we use the type as module. What do? We put the type as module, yeah, to say that, or to instruct the browser that this is not a normal JavaScript file like this. It is instead, okay, it's a module. Yeah. So yes, next to this script, we can put type is equal to module. It simply treats, now it treats that this is again specifically ECMAScript module. All right. So yeah, that is one very important thing. Otherwise, your module import export syntax won't work. So the browser automatically fetches and evaluates the imported module, and it imports if needed only, and then runs the script. Yeah, as I told you. Another important thing, modules works only via HTTP, not locally. Which means, if you remember, let's say if I have an HTML file, I can run this using live server also, or I can open this file directly using, the file mode. I can just directly open this file in browser. Yeah. So one is, how do I run a given HTML file? I can run one directly, yeah, directly using the file. Another one using a live server, yeah, using the file mode, meaning I directly open the so and so index.html file, and another option is I use HTTP. So what they're saying, so this will have some local host and then it will have some port. This syntax of module will work only with no HTTP. They will not work here. The syntax is not supported here. Yeah, module to work, you need to be having under HTTP only. Then only it will be able to load and treat them as module. Okay. So these are actually what are modules in JavaScript. Yeah. First thing is we should have a type is equal to module, and on top of that, yeah, they're not like, I mean, they almost look like a normal JavaScript file only, but we will have import and export syntax. And modules basically do encapsulate, which means they create their own dedicated scope. Okay, let's move on. So core module features. Yes, we have seen some of them already now. Module have a module level scope, which means you cannot borrow it from outside. On top of that, there's another feature which is called strict mode. We've already discussed what exactly is strict mode in JavaScript. So we use this. So what is script mode? Mani, what is script mode?
So that is called directive, not the directive. But JavaScript code will run in strict mode basically if we use the use strict.
Correct. So JavaScript has a mode called strict mode, which basically it's a directive to the compiler. Yeah. So there are some older syntax of JavaScript. Yeah. Which are actually not removed from the language just to maintain the backward compatibility. Okay. So if at all you want to run it in a strict mode where that's the most recommended, yeah, way of executing JavaScript, yeah, or also called as modern mode. So we write this word within quote use strict. With that, basically JavaScript will be able to detect some of the syntaxes, older syntaxes, yeah, which are supposed to be an error. Okay, JavaScript kind of ignores by default in a default mode, but we tell no, we want those things, yeah. So we don't allow those kind of syntax. We want to be in a stricter mode. Well, in terms of writing the code. Yeah, it's not a different way of execution. It's in terms of writing the quality of the code, we should be in strict mode. For example, I can create a variable and then directly assign a value without even specifying const, let, and var. And this is allowed. So this should not happen. Yeah, you force that you have to create a variable, you have to put this syntax, then you will have to enable strict mode. How? So we already know this. Yeah. So we have to put this word called use strict, then the strict mode gets enabled to that entire file, and this has to be the very first line of your file. Now this was an opt-in, which means for a developer like you and me, we could have written, we could have also even forgotten. But part of the module syntax, what they brought, they said this is uh, always. If at all you are putting anywhere type is equal to module, and that's how you are working with the JavaScript modules, the code within that module you consider it is running in strict mode by default. And that's why the syntax will throw an error because you're not used any keyword here. Basically, undeclared variable you're trying to initialize it. Yeah, this is one of the core module feature. Yeah. So now what we are seeing, how these modules are different from a regular script. Yeah. Okay. Fine. So the next thing is, yeah, module level scope, which means let's say I have defined something in user.js and then I'm trying to use it in hello.js. Yeah, not possible. This will give me an error. No such variable. though they are in two different files, you cannot access them. Then what is the correct way? The correct way is you have to export it. You have to add an export, and in the hello.js you have to write an import. Now you will be able to access that particular variable or a function from that module. That's why this is because they have their own scope. Yeah. Okay. Here is another example. So two scripts, same page, both is equal to type is equal module. They don't see each other's top level variables. Yeah, that's also same. Whether you use a separate file or you use type is equal to module and write within the same HTML file, you write these two block. Still, they're saying it doesn't work because so when you put script type is equal to module, so this is different block, this is different module. Yeah, so you cannot even, so though it is declared here and you cannot directly use it below this. Okay, so let's say you, okay, I think this is some note you can actually read on. Yeah, then a module code is evaluated only the first time when it is imported. This is another interesting feature that you need to be aware. Which means, what if same file I am actually importing it in multiple places. I am putting in a file 1.js, I am putting in 2.js. And in that imported or the file which I am importing, there I have written some code which is alert module is evaluated. Which means I'm directly written a script, not writing within any function or so. So I told you as and when the module is imported for the first time, it gets immediately executed also after it has been successfully loaded. Now when for the first in the case of 1.js, assume like module is getting evaluated, then they're saying it doesn't get evaluated in 2.js. It won't print this line again. Yeah, because this module code gets executed or evaluated only first time when they're imported. You can do import in multiple places. There is no restriction on that. But execution happens only once. Yeah, the module code. But you can borrow function and you can call those functions also anytime. That's also not a problem. All right. Yeah. So with this, I think these are actually the core feature. There is one thing called as okay import.meta. I think yeah we can ignore for now. Not so important. The other important one, yeah, the core module level feature is so inside the module, if you try to print a special value, yeah, which is actually called this, yeah, which is undefined. If you try to print this value, it is undefined. Whereas the same value, if you try to print in a normal, yeah, normal script without a module, this actually points to what is called as a global object. In case of a browser, it is the global object is window. Yeah. So this it will print a global object within a normal script, whereas within a module it is undefined. Yeah. So these are some of the core features of module that we need to aware. Yeah. One is okay, they're having separate scope. So though they are in the same files, I mean though they are in the same HTML you included, the scope is not visible. Yeah. You will have to export and do an import. And once you are importing it, module get executed only once. Yeah, for the very first time. It doesn't get executed again and again, right? And then we saw now the value of this is undefined within the module. And another core feature which we understood, module, yeah, is executed in a strict mode, right? Module gets executed in strict mode always. It's not like by default and then you can change it. No, it is always it executes in strict mode. Now with this understanding of the concepts of modules, so let's quickly see the syntax of export and import. I think we are already a bit familiar with what is import and the basic export syntax. and import also basic example we have seen. But in this chapter, they have given the variations of it, the different examples for it. Okay, so I'll quickly walk through it. Yeah, we'll not spend much on it. I think I'll leave it to you guys to practice and be familiar with this because we use this heavily when we are actually moving to React. Okay, let's say I have an array. I can do export. I just have to add a keyword. I have a constant. I have to add a keyword export. I have a class or a function. Yes, for that also I have to add an export. And they say, so when you're exporting a function or a class, you don't need a semicolon. Yeah. So like at the end of function, we don't write a semicolon. So same goes. Yeah. So though with export, only with the statements like variables and all, you need a semicolon. I mean that's the list. Export apart from declaration. This is a syntax I told you. Yeah. If you don't want to write export in repetitively in all the places, you can write all of them in one go, which is called say hi, say bye within curly brackets. Okay, moving on. Yeah, so those things are we are already familiar with respect to syntax. Then there is another syntax which is called import star. What is it? Import star. Import star basically says, so let's say I've exported so many things from a single file, say hello spy and say hi. While importing this file, yeah, while importing this file in another module, okay, so I can use the syntax called import star, which means the syntax is import star, yeah, star nothing but all, yeah, all the things which is okay. I have to give a name as say hi, yeah, something like okay, let's say obj, yeah, from that file dot slash say hi and dot js also you'll have to write. Now whatever was there exported in say hi is available with this name actually. What is its other syntax or the normal syntax is normally we are supposed to write import say hi, say hello, comma pi if wherever I am trying to import it from the same thing path. You see that star syntax. So I am naming this as an object. By what? By importing everything from that. I'm not able to just get only say hi and say hello with this syntax. I kind of need everything, but I also want to give a name. So then I'll scope everything under this object. So now wherever I want to use, I can say object dot say hi. This is a syntax of import star. Okay. Now there is also another syntax called import as. Okay, I'll tell you what is the use case of import as. For example, now you've gone with this syntax, the earlier syntax, the first syntax, and you would like to import this. But what if in this function also I've defined some method with the name, same name? Then there is a name conflict now. I'm importing one from that file, but that has a name. I'm importing once again. Sorry, I have defined one, but that also has a same name. Do you see a name conflict? Yes, I see. So to avoid this kind of name conflict, there is a syntax called import as, meaning as I can rename now whatever I want. Yeah, let's say hi to, just to tell you, because this is different. I want to give a different name. Now, if at all I want to use this method, then I can call with this new name, say hi to, then say hi, and this will now not conflict with say hi. So this is to, alias, okay, as nothing but aliasing this particular name into something, and I can rename how many ever I want. Getting what I'm saying? So star as, that's again the same thing. Okay, everything I'm naming it as library. Now individually I want to name, then I can say this has hi and this one has boy. Okay, export. Yeah, well export also it is possible to rename it actually or give an alias name, alternate name, just similar to import as. we can also during export it is possible to name it differently. Is it clear? So far any doubts with respect to the import and export syntax? We have got last two more concepts. Yeah, go ahead if you have a question.
Oh, no, sir, no.
Okay, so we've got two more terminologies to understand what that is actually called as export default. So what they're saying, there are mainly two kinds of modules. Yeah, modules can contain a library, yeah, set of functions like say.js, modules that declare single entity, example user.js, exports only class user. So what it means is like, so library is nothing but you have defined multiple things like okay in one file and you want to import it in elsewhere. And also, you know, if you remember yesterday I said one, component per file. Remember? Yeah, one component per file. Okay, we'll end up creating multiple files. That's how the standard practice is. And they say mostly the second approach is a preferred. Yeah, so that everything resides in its own module, which means for every function, yeah, which is you end up creating a separate file itself, separate module itself. And so that's what the preferred one. So they brought in a syntax called export default for those kind of modules. What is they brought? They brought, export to default. Why? Because generally we prefer having only one thing exported or one function being defined per file or per module, and to export that one single one, so we can write export to default. Now here they have defined a class and that needs to be exported. That's why export default and the class name. And for that syntax, in the import, we write just simply import and the name of the class or the function and so on. So now what I'm trying to say, so in terms of the syntax, let's say in say hi, yeah, I have something called, you know, uh, say hi, yeah, export function, export. Here I have to say export default function, okay, say hi 3. Let's say I write say hi 3, and this syntax is called export default. And we prefer this syntax, let's say this file has only one export. And usually we'll try to keep one export. Now for this kind of export, in what is its equivalent import syntax? The equivalent import syntax is you are supposed to write import and you no need of this curly brackets now. You should not put this. Now say hi 3 from that file. So since you're already telling, okay, that this is a default export, and in that file we have written say, export as default, so you no need to put this curly bracket, which will not work. You have to put, yeah, you have to put directly the name. And this is its equivalent syntax of exporting and importing, or its equivalent syntax to import a default module. Now, one thing you'll have to be understanding about the default module, it is also possible I can name whatever I want directly here. There is no hash syntax. Here itself directly I can put, okay, say, hi, hello. If I want, I can rename it to whatever I want. I can even rename it to like, okay, test. I don't have to say what is, don't have to change anything in that. Why? Because this import is importing the default import. What it is doing? This is doing the default import. Default, whatever is being exported, that is what it is using. Now, one other thing very important before I, talk more on the default and other things. Always your import line should be at the very top. You cannot write import anywhere you want. Import should be at the top of the file only. All the imports should be at the top of the file. If there are any exports, they should come after all these imports. For example, even this can also export something, correct? Yeah, you have a question? Okay, export come
Yes,
after
sir.
all the imports. Imports, they should be at the top. Yeah. So what I was saying now, the default export and its equivalent import. So they've given a table here, default export and normal export. The normal export and import is also called as named export. What it is called as named export. Why? Here you see I have to mention the exact name. But now in case of default, I told you you no need to mention the name. You can put, I mean, you no need to mention the same name. That's why these imports, I mean, these exports are also called as named export. In the file, whatever name you are given, with the same name, you will have to write during the import. And on top of this, one other thing to remember is per file in JavaScript, you can write only one default export. What you can write? You can write only one default export per file because the point is to have default only one. But let's say you have too many, you can continue to write, you can continue to write the named exports. See this we are exporting with the name only. And for that we put a curly brackets. Yeah, per file you can have only one default max and you can have unlimited named exports. And during the import syntax, yes, we put curly bracket and then write the module and here we write all this separately. Let's say I want only say hi, then I can only get say hi. I want all the three, then only I can write all the three imports. Also, in the import syntax, it is possible to combine both, which means, which means I can write, I can write a default export which is say hi 3, then comma, and then I write a named export which to be imported here, say hi or say hello. Now what I'm doing in this import, yeah, so far we used to write like this. In the named import, we used to just write the name without curly bracket, but to combine both, we, we write this comma and then we write this curly bracket and then we write the each of the functions that we are exporting from it. Okay, so yeah, so apart from understanding the core module feature, this syntax is what you should be knowing because this syntax we use heavily. Don't worry about by hearting and remembering the syntax. So since we have already started with React and we have started writing components, this syntax will become more familiar to you. But just remember the core features as a concept that we understood, which is basically a strict executed only once, yeah, and each module has module level scope. These 3 points, if you remember about module, I think that is good enough to start with. Yes, of course, the purpose of again module is, yeah, to have reusability, yeah, and maintainability and also encapsulation. Okay, I think with this, I think I've covered what I intended to cover. Yeah, this much if you know about modules is good enough. I think for practice, we see heavily usage of modules in React.